Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are absolutely immersing ourselves in the fascinating, critically acclaimed world of Naomi Kritzer. She's a speculative fiction writer who has pretty much mastered a very specific and honestly very necessary art for the times we're living in. Look, if you've ever felt that subtle, creeping anxiety about where our tech is heading, like when your phone suddenly shows you an ad for a blender right after you just talked about making smoothies out loud, then you are gonna love this. What Kritzer does, and what we're really going to dig into today, is translate those massive, global technological anxieties into fiction that is deeply personal, grounded, and emotionally resonant. As we go through this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how she builds these amazing award-winning worlds.
So what actually happens when algorithms begin influencing daily life? Now, you got to realize this isn't some wild hypothetical about the year 3000. This is a question about your life, literally today. Every single time you open your phone, scroll through a social feed, or even apply for a job, algorithms are humming away in the background. And that instantly connects your personal reality to Kritzer's central thesis. She isn't writing about a distant future that has nothing to do with you. She's writing about the near future, the immediate, everyday consequences of the digital tools we are already relying on right now.
And that brings us to a really cool concept called human realism in speculative fiction. This is Kritzer's absolute bread and butter. It's speculation that functions not as escapism, but as an extension of the world we're already stuck in. Even when she drops in advanced tech or crazy futuristic systems, she completely grounds those concepts in relatable, everyday experiences. We're talking about clocking into a mundane job, dealing with loneliness, navigating those super tricky family dynamics, or just texting your friends. The technology might be brand new, but the human experience, that remains incredibly familiar.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the mundane future.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the contrast. You know traditional sci-fi, right? It usually leans heavy on distant galaxies, totally alien worlds, and huge escapist action sequences. But Kritzer totally flips the script. She focuses on near-future tech, the grind of everyday bureaucracy, and deeply relatable modern anxieties. She explicitly steps away from the alien and the distant. Instead, she builds futures that feel like they are just a few short steps away from our present moment. It's this highly realistic approach where, honestly, you're much more likely to see a character locked in a frustrating argument with an automated HR chatbot than out there firing a laser blaster. She has this great perspective, which is that her work is not simply about what if, but also about what happens if society continues in this direction. And wow, that is a massive distinction. Traditional sci-fi loves the hypothetical what if, but Kritzer explicitly pivots away from that. She essentially forces us to look at the immediate trajectory of our society. It's an extrapolation of the here and now. Like, if we keep relying on all this digital power, if we keep compromising on our privacy, where exactly do we end up next Tuesday?
Because she keeps that near-future focus so tight. Her writing transforms into this incredibly visceral social commentary. She is literally holding up a mirror to our current social trends. Her stories ask us directly to deeply consider how our own privacy, our own labor, and our own social structures are being fundamentally altered by technological change. So it's not just a fun story, it's a sharp critique of the very world we are currently building around ourselves.
Moving right along to Section 2, the flawed protagonist. Let's zoom in a bit from that macro level of world building down to the micro level, the actual people living in these worlds. Instead of giving us the traditional, perfect, heroic savior who is entirely disconnected from normal life, Kritzer gives us the flawed protagonist. Her characters are smart, sure, but they are deeply imperfect. They mess up. They misunderstand situations. They wrestle with institutional pressures and everyday uncertainty, just like you and I do. They aren't invincible heroes. They are just normal people trying to figure things out as they go. And that leads us to this fascinating idea of experiencing massive systems through ordinary interiority. Kritzer focuses on the internal lives of these imperfect people as they try to navigate algorithms, surveillance states, and giant bureaucracies that are way, way larger than themselves. So we aren't just observing these huge futuristic ideas from a safe distance, we are feeling them. We feel them through the fears, the hopes, and the sheer frustrations of her characters. And honestly, that is exactly what gives her stories such profound emotional depth.
All right, let's jump to Section 3, the gray area. Here's where she really gets you thinking. Can artificial intelligence develop morality? When we hand over immense technological power to machines, what responsibilities come with that? Who is actually accountable when things go wrong?
She asks us to seriously pause and consider the ethical weight of the tools we're busy creating. And furthermore, how does surveillance shape human behavior? When you know an algorithm or a camera is watching you, how do you change? What's absolutely brilliant about Kritzer's writing is that she uses these themes to expose the contradictions in human behavior rather than just handing us simple, neat answers. She wants you to wrestle with the ambiguity. It's like a giant puzzle with no clear edges.
And this brilliantly illustrates another big question. Who actually benefits from all this technological progress? How do these systems reinforce inequality? In Kritzer's worlds, technology flatly refuses to be purely good or purely evil. A piece of software isn't some mustache-twirling villain. Instead, technology acts as a direct reflection of our own human systems, our own biases, and our own values. If a system is flawed, well, it's because the humans who built it are flawed.
Now I know what you might be thinking. Wow, this sounds incredibly heavy. But Kritzer actually prevents these topics from becoming emotionally overwhelming by blending those serious themes with a ton of wit and warmth. She masterfully tackles stuff like political corruption, online misinformation, and social instability by injecting humor and irony, especially into her bureaucratic settings. That humor exposes the sheer absurdity of some of these institutional systems, which makes the story super engaging, accessible, and remarkably warm, despite the heavy topics.
Let's move to section 4 and see how this builds recurring themes.
Just look at this massive sweep of 21st century concerns she tackles, from artificial intelligence and digital identity to the endless, soul-crushing bureaucracy of automated systems. Whether it's surveillance, political polarization, or the ethics of automation, her work pretty much covers the whole shebang. But remember, because her prose is so conversational and clear, you absolutely do not need a computer science degree to engage with these profound critiques. She completely breaks down the barrier to entry, letting anyone explore those blurred lines between humanity and technology.
And finally, let's pull back for section 5, the big picture.
So the crucial point here is that Kritzer's ultimate legacy is moving way beyond mere adventure, to examine the very systems shaping our everyday existence. Her work is vital because she demands that we think critically about the digital dependence that totally defines our 21st century lives. She uses speculative fiction not as a way to escape reality, but as a lens to bring our current reality into much sharper, clearer focus. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly vital question. If society continues in its current direction, what will your everyday future look like? Where do we end up? It's a question Naomi Kritzer asks in every single story she writes. And honestly, it's a question we all need to be asking ourselves right now. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Now go take a hard look at your own technological reality. And hey, maybe pick up one of Kritzer's stories to see exactly what tomorrow might bring.